We are live.
We are live. Live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Last Awakening Warriors. We're doing a podcast this evening. Our subject matter is Paul the Apostle. Paul the Apostle.
Yeah.
And you are here with myself, Jonathan Walker. How you doing? And my trusty cohort, Joshua David.
Joshua
How
David,
you doing?
I have been doing well. These last 3 months have been a roller coaster of a ride.
Roller coaster that only seems to go uphill, though, right?
Yes.
If so possible. Yeah. That's the way I feel also. Very much enlightened. Very much more enlightened since the last time we talked on here, right? So basically, what we're coming to you today with is, it's pretty revealing. It's a little shocking. It might be a little startling and unsettling to you. I know that when all this started with us and dying to self, into the flesh and the cares of this world, the catalyst for it was when we were studying in Paul together and in the different writings of Paul in the New Testament. We started seeing some inconsistencies in the way he talked about things, and not only contradicting the things that Christ said in some areas, but also contradicting the things that he said himself in other books that he wrote.
Yes.
So that kind of started our whole reasoning for questioning, what is this? What is this about? Why is he speaking like this? What's the meaning? And is it just Paul? Is it just in the writings of Paul? Was he confused? So we started asking questions, and it's something that the church doesn't like you to do.
Never.
Yeah, it's something the church don't like you to do, and that comes down to that control thing, right?
It does.
They want to keep in control of their narratives, and they have certain belief systems.
Keep you in control, keep you under their thumb.
Keep you guilty.
The all-watching eye of them controlling you and what you do, what you say. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really no different than the constraints of the government and the powers that be in the whole world. I mean, the church has just fell in line with all of that.
They give you, basically to give you freedoms and take them away when you're sovereign in yourself and you really have those freedoms.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like I heard it described as it's kind of like science, to where once there's a consensus that says, well, this is what this is, then that's the truth, right? All of a sudden it's fact, even though it's not really even tested that much, and don't have to have any truth in it. It could be just somebody's opinion, but since everybody agreed, then now it's fact. And that's the way with the church's narrative, is that you get enough people that agree that this is the truth, all of a sudden it's fact. When in realism and realistic terms, it's not. In every scripture, there are many truths.
Many.
And so we were just wanting to get to the bottom of stuff, and that's how we came to see the Father, and we come to die to the self and our fleshly desires, and everything is way more spiritual than it is any kind of religion now, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So if you are ready, sir.
I got one thing to say.
Sure.
The same people who rail against science having consensus and saying that it's truth do the same thing with the word.
Absolutely.
As long as the majority rules, then that's what truth is, right?
Right.
Which is kind of funny because they believe in a government that was set up to oppose that same thinking.
Exactly. Which is one of the things we'll get into, is that Paul talking about respecting and honoring and the government and stuff like that. Which, yeah, Anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. So you ready?
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready.
All right. Yellow leader check. Red leader check. Engage. I had to do that. I stole that from something. That's all right. Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so in Acts 20:33, Paul is speaking, and he says, "I have not coveted anyone's silver, gold, or clothing."
So he's not covetous. He's letting us know he is not a covetous person. Okay, good on him, right? Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's doing righteous works, right? He's not coveting, right?
That's right. Letting us know it. All right.
Okay, so in 1 Corinthians 9:12, he's speaking. He says, "If others have this right of support of you," and in this, you can go and read in chapter 9. He's referring to monetary means. He's referring to money.
Right. Right.
Shouldn't we have it all the more? Meaning him, Luke, and all the people that were following Paul's teachings. Shouldn't they have it all the more? But we did not use this right, so he did not take money from the Corinthians. On the contrary, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ. So he's telling the Corinthians, we didn't take your support because we didn't want to hinder the gospel of Christ.
They didn't want the Corinthians. They didn't want to come off like they were selling
the gospel. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we go over to 2 Corinthians 12:13, and we have him speaking, and he says, "How were you inferior to other churches, except that I was never a burden to you?" This is a question he's saying. Then he says, "Forgive me of this wrong." That's kind of an odd statement. He says, "How were you inferior to other churches, except that I was never a burden to you?" But then he asks forgiveness for being a burden to them.
Yeah. Well, you got to apologize for something you didn't do.
And the burden that he was referring to was a financial burden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, him being there didn't cost him anything, in other words.
In the New Living Translation, it says it this way. And it's kind of weird because, like, how they speak back then is awkward, man.
It's jacked up. Yeah.
The only thing I failed to do, now you'll get it when I read this first, and this is the New Living Translation. The only thing I failed to do, which I do in other churches, was to become a financial burden to you. Please forgive me of this wrong. Yeah, he said that.
I don't understand why you apologize for not being a financial burden.
No, he's telling him to forgive him because he wasn't a financial burden.
Yeah.
So he's saying, I should have been one to you as well.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make any sense, though.
It does, because when we get to these other scriptures, you'll understand why.
Right.
But remember, he's done told you that he's not selling the gospel. He's not coveted anyone's silver, gold, or their clothing. Yet here he's saying he should have. He should have been that financial burden to the Corinthians. And forgive him because he wasn't.
Yeah. But why would they want him to be the financial burden? That's what I'm saying. Why you gonna apologize? They're thinking, no problem, bro. Glad you wasn't. Yeah. That's what I was saying. It doesn't make sense to apologize. It's like me coming to your house and I provide everything myself, right? And then be like, listen, Joshua, I'm sorry I couldn't have been more of a mooch, you know. you got to forgive me for not, using all your money. See, it doesn't make sense. But what's the next one? And this is somebody that mind you, did say in another writing that a workman is worthy of his hire.
A workman is worthy of his pay, yes.
Yeah, he's worthy to get paid. If you're out there doing the work, you're worthy of getting paid for it. That's what he says. Okay. What's the next one? Because we're coming up to some good stuff here, people. Get ready.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 9:17. If I preach voluntarily, I have my reward. If not voluntarily, I am simply discharging the trust committed to me. And verse 18. What then is my reward? Just this, that in preaching the gospel, I may offer it free of charge, and so not make full use of my rights as a preacher of the gospel. Again, he's telling you, I'm not charging you for what I'm doing.
Even though, like I said before, he said a workman is worthy. He's worthy of getting paid. He's saying, not me. No, not me. I'm doing this for free. I am humble.
I am humble, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want that to be something that causes you to look at me differently because I take money for preaching the gospel.
Yep.
That it might hinder what Christ is working because you get caught up on the money.
Yep. So he's being humble. This is humble Paul here. Humble Paul.
Yeah.
This is what we're getting right now.
He always reminds you every time he gets a chance of how humble he is.
Yep.
So 2 Corinthians 11:7. Was it a sin for me to lower myself in order to elevate you by the preaching of the gospel to you free of charge? Was that a sin?
Here's my question. Why would it be a sin to lower yourself? When Christ teaches against exalting yourself, then it seems to me that lowering yourself would be in no means a sin. That it would rather be the right thing to do.
Unless it's under false pretenses, right?
Yep.
It's a lowering of himself to appear that he's humble and that he's doing something that he constantly tells you that he's not doing, right? He's constantly telling you that he's doing this free of charge and that he's humble and that he only does the work of the Father and
This was another way for him to point out, look at my humility.
Yep.
Look at this humility. Okay.
And he's saying, is that a sin? It is a sin to appear to you to be humble so that I can preach the gospel free of charge? That's what he's saying here, because in the next verse, in verse 18, we can clearly see what happened. I robbed other churches by receiving support from them so as to serve you.
Now we're going to go this again. Now, Paul is speaking to who now?
The Corinthians.
Okay. And now he's saying, now listen real closely, people. He's saying what he did, so that this is how he preached to the Corinthians without taking money from the Corinthians. This is how.
Yeah, but he was still a burden to them. That's why he kind of said, what he said before, and you know, because the reality is, when you go and preach and you stay, and these people are providing your meals and stuff for you, you become a burden to them, especially depending on how much you're eating and what you're doing. And they're the ones fitting the bill for everything, which they were. Yeah. Even though he wasn't taking money when he left from them.
Exactly.
Just him being there. It's like if you went over your uncle's house and stayed for a week. Eventually you're going to become a burden because he's spending more money on you than what he would normally would. Even though he does it, even though he does it willingly because he's your uncle and he loves you, right? He's not asking you for anything in return. It's just another mouth to feed. It becomes a burden after a while.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a burden.
And this is where the great deception of Paul comes in, because to the Corinthians, he was this humble, pious person, and, he was doing this free of charge, blah, blah, blah. Well, he was robbing other churches to do it, and he tells you right here in this verse, I robbed other churches by receiving support from them so that I can come to serve you. He's saying that I came to you as a beggar, as someone humble and low, because I stole money from these other people. And he's doing this all in deception. And that's why in 17 he says, was it a sin for me to lower myself in order to elevate you by preaching the gospel to you free of charge?
Mm-hmm.
It's all lies and deception with him. Because he did come to them free of charge. Didn't charge them a dime, but he's robbing other people to do it.
Right. And the interesting thing is that if you studied into the New Testament and you know about Peter, Peter was considered the rock and the one that started the majority of churches back then, right? So if you start these other churches, because we've been talking about this, it's kind of funny. It's not where this term came from, but the term robbing Peter to pay Paul, which comes off really funny.
Right, robbing the churches that Peter started from, robbing from them to start his own ministry and come to these other churches like he's this super humble, godly man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all based on deception.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we want you guys to just think about these scriptures, maybe after we're done with the entire podcast, go back to each one of these little Paul teachings we're going to do throughout this podcast and ask yourself, why is he doing that? Why is he talking like that? Why is he coming off shady like that? And it's not that we're making anything up. I mean, Joshua literally just read you the scriptures.
And they'll be posted in the video as well, right? As I'm reading them.
Absolutely, good deal. And it's not. Here's the deal too. If it's upsetting to you what you're hearing, the text. We heard another minister say the text doesn't care. The text does not care that it upsets you. Truth does not care that you're upset.
It doesn't care what you've been taught. It says what it says. It doesn't care
what you've been taught about. It doesn't care your doctrine. It doesn't care your belief system. It doesn't care what your pastor said to you.
No.
It doesn't care. It is what it is. Truth is undefinable. You cannot change it. It just is what it is. So, and it's a hard pill to swallow, and we get it. We get it as good as anybody else gets it because it's what happened to us. We've seen this, and I know for myself, Paul was like a superhero. Okay, Paul was like, I always told everybody, man, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna go hug up on Jesus and give love to him, and my next person, after maybe my mama, right, is Paul. I want to go say, what's up to Paul? And, so seeing that there's things that were inconsistent in his writings and the kind of shady stuff that it looked like we were seeing 3 months ago was really disheartening, man. How did you feel about it?
I felt vindicated almost when these truths hit me the way they did.
You were seeing things a little different than I was, obviously.
Yeah, man, it's been a year-long battle with Paul, and just his own teachings contradicting his other teachings he taught. Let alone every time he opens his mouth, it being a direct contradiction of what Jesus said. Every time.
Right.
Which is always the issue I had with my walk with the Christ to begin with, was Christ would say this, and I'd read the words of Christ and read, and he's saying this, and then you go over a chapter to one of the books Paul wrote, and he'll tell you the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It definitely keeps that internal struggle going on with everybody. You know,
right, and then you know, the whole time, you know, I'm following and doing things that I'm supposed to in this life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, we have the internal struggle of who are we supposed to be listening to, right? Because either there's a way for all these things to work out that I'm not seeing, which there was. It's called every man's a liar and let, you know, Christ's words be true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when all else fails, forget what Paul said, forget what Moses said, forget all the prophets, forget Matthew, Mark, John, Peter, Andrew, Philip, Thomas, forget all of them and go read what Jesus told you.
Absolutely. That's the one thing that means the most. It means
so if you're having an internal struggle, if you're having a struggle with something that Paul said, go find out what Jesus said, because what he said mattered. Everybody else, they can shut up for all I care. Because they're lies, every one of them.
And listen, out of the whole thing, of the whole podcast and everything we're going to be saying, Joshua just said probably the most important statement you're going to hear tonight. When all else fails and you don't understand who you're supposed to understand or who you're supposed to believe, go to Christ, because He is in
and read His words.
The Father is in Him, and He can be trusted. So if you ever doubt anything, see what He says.
And then you're going to have to make that choice, right? You're going to have to make that choice to believe Christ over what everyone else is telling you. Because I guarantee you that the moment you start believing Christ over what Paul said, over what any of the other apostles, the prophets, Moses, whoever, as soon as you start believing what Christ said and speaking those things, what Christ said, you will see a stark difference in your life of how people react to you.
Yeah. So you start ministering truth. Don't be surprised if your deacons, your pastors, your grandma. I mean,
it's like this. I kind of think of it this way sometimes, man. The church believes that Jesus was Christ, He was God. Okay, yet we need Paul to explain everything that Christ was saying, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Is Paul greater than God, Christ, right? Jesus? Was He greater? If He's the one that had to explain everything to us? No, that was Christ's job, right? That's why He came here. He came to tell us what we needed to know. We didn't need nobody else to explain to us anything. Read Christ's words, follow what He said, and go about your day.
Yeah, Paul's real mission was that he created a religion out of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And in creating a religion, all of a sudden there's a lot of self involved, right?
Yep.
You decide, well, this is going to be the truth. This is how we're going to teach, and that's the way it is. And there's a lot more that goes into that, and why he started, and why who was influencing him to start, and all of that. And we'll probably get to some more of that later on in the video as well. So we good for this portion of this podcast?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay. Don't go nowhere, because we're just doing a jump cut. We're going to get right into the next topic about Paul. You won't even know that we left.